Hello. Today we're going to take a look at how we can enhance our Gantt charts within Oracle APEX by allowing users the ability to drag and drop different tasks by taking advantage of the Jet extension toolkit that is available with that Gantt chart. This toolkit comes with events that you can track in APEX, such as ojMove and oj-resize. And so we can use those in combination with some initialization code on our Gantt chart to allow our users this functionality. So first, I'll take a look at an example here of the finished product so we can see what that's going to look like. Here you see I have a Gantt chart that's based on the sample data set that comes out of the box with the sample charts application. If I pick up a task and choose to move it, I'll get a notification. Likewise, if I start to extend a task, I'll get a similar notification. So how can we actually set this up for ourselves? Let's go ahead and create a Gantt chart. We'll choose a Gantt chart and give it a quick name. And the query I'm going to use here is the exact same query that comes with the sample charts app. So if you have that installed and you have the EBO demo chart tasks table, you can utilize this same query to test this out. And then I'll just pick a different navigation item. Next step, we will align our columns from our query to our Gantt chart so we can display it properly. So we'll first choose our start and end date for the Gantt chart, our ID and name columns, as well as our task start and task end date. And we'll say create page. So if I go ahead and run the page now, you can see it does render, but it's a little hard to see. So I'm actually going to go back and make a few changes. The first thing I'll do is turn on these vertical grid lines, and then I'll just take off the animation as well, since we want to focus primarily on the drag and drop capabilities right now. So there's our Gantt chart. If I was to grab and try to drag, you can see the mouse changes, but I'm not actually able to make it move. Same deal when I try to resize it. It makes no effect on the actual chart out of the box. So the first thing we'll do is we'll come over to our Gantt chart and we will give it a static ID so that we can reference it throughout the JavaScript code that we're going to use. So for this one, I'll just call it my Gantt. If you choose to use a different static ID, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you change the static ID within the JavaScript code. Now, if we head over to attributes and find this initialization JavaScript function, we can run this function right here. So this is going to do a couple things. The first thing is going to find this option for drag and drop move tasks and enable it. And then it's also going to enable the resizing. So this by itself, I'll show you what it looks like, but I'm also going to go ahead and log the options directly to the console so I can show you the object in the console. So just that simple change, I can run the page and you have your Gantt chart, and now you should be able to drag and drop it, but as you'll see when you drop it, it disappears off the screen. Same thing for resizing. If I try to resize it, it's going to disappear. The object still exists. It didn't disappear, so I can pick it up again and move it again. But it's always going to disappear when you let go because we don't have code to handle that portion just yet. And if I take a look at the console right here, so you can see here on drag and drop move tasks, it's now enabled. So we can close that out for now, and I'll go back to our page design. The next thing we'll do is we will define a number of JavaScript functions here on our function and global variable declaration. The code between moving and resizing Gantt chart elements is very similar. So I created a number of functions that will help to avoid having to write that code twice in what is to be both those events. So the first one we'll do, we'll convert a ISO date string into a timestamp, and then I have a very similar one that does the opposite. So this will take it from a timestamp back into a date string. Then I have a quick helper function here that will convert that to the format that my database is looking for. I then have something for sorting the rows by the resource field, so you can utilize this function if you want. We would want to be able to also find a task by ID. So within a specific row, you can manipulate just that individual task using this function. The next function we have is a bit longer, so we'll break it into pieces. This is going to call a AJAX callback process called save task states, and it's going to set the value of 3 global variables: the ID of the task, the start and end date. On success, it will check for an action type. So if the action type is move, it will display the message associated with move. If the action type is resize, it'll display a message associated with resize. And this is using the JavaScript API apex.message show page success. The next one, in that message for resizing, I am also calculating the start and end date, the new duration. So I have another helper function that will help me do that. And so with those functions out of the way, we can go ahead and save. There is one more function that I created, but I never utilized. So I will paste it here just in case you need it. It will also be in the code in the repository. But that is to actually update the task row. So that's that function right there. Next thing I'll do is I will create a dynamic action on my Gantt chart. So the first one I'll just call Gantt for ojMove. And I'll create one more for Gantt ojResize. The first one will use JavaScript code. Actually, they'll both be JavaScript code, but we also need to talk about when this action is actually going to get triggered. It's not necessarily the refresh of the region, but instead it's something custom. And that custom event is called ojMove. And the custom event for resize is called ojResize. Now, where is this documented? It's documented in the extension toolkit, which I'll have linked below. If you come down to oj-gantt, and then in here under attributes, you have the drag and drop move task. So this is what we used for the initialization code that actually allowed us to move, pick up, and drag a task. Then you also have these events, ojMove and ojResize. These events are what we're capturing here with these dynamic actions. So here's where they're getting triggered, going to execute once they're triggered. So we'll start with our movement of any given task. The first thing we'll do is we will retrieve the data from the Gantt chart itself. Then we'll go through and we will calculate the time offset for the task movement, so where it was moved to. We then want to access all the rows of the Gantt chart and sort them based on this resource element, so it's easier to identify the one that we're currently looking at. Then we'll go through and we will identify that row where it was originally located. We'll find the specific task within that row. And then in my case, I didn't actually want to allow users to be able to move across different rows. I only wanted them to move within the same row. So I created a quick if statement that checked if they were trying to do that. And if they are, exit the function and also display a quick alert message to the user letting them know that they cannot do that. Then I needed to update the task start and end date based on the new position that was chosen. And then with those start and end dates, I wanted to format them as well using one of our functions that we had previously defined. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to call save task states function, which is then going to call the AJAX process, which is going to allow us to save it to the database. The next step of code here is going to remove the task from the original row, and then I'm going to add the task to the new row here. And finally, I need to update the Gantt chart and refresh the rows like that. Again, you'll see I reference my Gantt, which is my static ID throughout this code. If you change it there, make sure you change it here as well. So that's move. Let's take a look at resize. So for resize, we'll start with something very similar. We'll get the data from the front end. We'll determine the changes in the start and end time based on resizing. So we have to consider that a user may push out the start date by resizing, or they might push out the end date, or vice versa, where they might actually bring them both backwards. So we had to take all those into consideration here. We then need to get the original start and end date for the task. And with those constants, we can then go ahead and do some calculations, which will give us the updated start time and updated end time. Then we want to take a look at all the rows of the Gantt chart and organize them by the resource field, like we did before. Here, once we locate the row that we want to target, we'll go into this if statement that will get the dates and then also convert the dates at the same time and call the AJAX process. Here I have some console logs. You can remove them later once you have this all sorted, but this helped me kind of debug my way through this. You'll also notice this is almost identical to our other save tasks function. The only difference is one of the parameters we're passing in is resize instead of move, and this is in reference to our action that we're calling with this function. Primarily used just to display a different message for moving versus resizing. And then just like the move task, our final 2 bits of code will be a update of the Gantt chart, and then resort by the resource, and then finally just a refresh of that region. So that's all sorted, but we do have this save task dates, which is calling an AJAX process. So let's go take a look at that. If we look back at the save tasks, it's calling something called save task dates, where it's passing these global variables and looking for a response. So this doesn't exist yet, but we'll create it right now. So we'll come over here to processing. We will create a AJAX callback. We'll give it the exact same name. And then this is what our code for the AJAX callback is going to look like. So we have a couple variables being set by global variables that are being sent from the JavaScript side. And then we have a simple update statement that's sending a success or a error back to the function that called it. So we can save that, and we can give this a quick try. So here's the same Gantt chart. Now if I pick it up and move it, I get a message. Likewise, if I extend it, there's the same message. These messages can be edited to however you want. If you're new to JavaScript and you just want to know where to edit your message, you can take a look at this function called save task dates. And in this, you have a custom message here that references some variables. But you can replace this with whatever makes sense for your use case. I hope this helped you guys. Thank you for watching.